Alright, I've been thinking about this for a while, so here we go. I'm going to complain about why I don't like Zephiel as a villain. Unlike my other videos, this is a rant. This isn't a second seal, it's not an in-depth character analysis, but it's my general impressions of Zephiel and where I feel that he fell short in Binding Blade. I'm going to warn you, this video is a little unhinged. As always, I need to lay some ground rules. This is my opinion and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of opposition, which is to be expected. This may be characterized as an unpopular opinion, but the purpose isn't to start controversy just for the sake of attention. This is a character I've been thinking about a lot over the past few months, and with my second seal and recruit being released, I felt it was time to cover a villain I didn't like. Also, I'm not trying to make any objective claims. This is a rant, and it's centered around what I don't like about Zephiel's character. If you do like him, then whatever, that's your prerogative. I'm not here to tell you what you can and cannot like. Also, this video is going to contain spoilers for Binding Blade and Blazing Sword, as well as a few other games, but I'll warn you ahead of time when I get to those. Before I rip into him, let me begin by talking about something I do enjoy about Zephiel, his backstory. So, for those of you who don't know or need a refresher, Zephiel was a pretty normal kid who was liked by most people. Unfortunately for him, Zephiel was stuck in a failing marriage. His father, King Desmond, hated Zephiel and wanted his bastard daughter, Guinevere, to be the heir to the Bernese throne. His mother, Queen Helene, didn't really care about Zephiel and used him as a pawn to secure her own social status and well-being. Zephiel tries to gain his father's approval, but King Desmond really doesn't care and constantly belittles him. Being the great father he is, he arranges for the Black Fang to steal the Fire Emblem and kill Zephiel before his coming-of-age ceremony. Fortunately for him, this plan is busted by Eliwood of the gang in Blazing Sword, ensuring that Zephiel is the future heir to the throne. Let's fast forward a few years. King Desmond tried to kill Zephiel a second time by handing him a poison goblet. Zephiel takes it under the pretense that he's finally won his father's approval, only to be brought to the brink of death. Murdoch helps Zephiel fake his own death and arranges a funeral. When King Desmond steps up to view the body, Zephiel rises and kills his father. This is the point where he has absolutely lost his shit. He then awakens Idun, plots with John, and begins the war in Alib 5 years later. So, looking at his backstory, we see that Zephiel is traumatized by his awful parents, which drives him to eliminate humanity on the idea that human emotions create strife and pain. What? What? What kind of half-assed progression is that? He has daddy issues, so his solution is to kill all of humanity? Really? Okay, let me back up real quick. A villain needs two things, a goal and a reason to have that goal. The reasoning behind a goal can be incredibly complex, hinging on multiple factors such as experiences, personality, social climate, and internal desires. Ideally, the two should be logically connected. We should understand, from the perspective of the villain, their goal and reasoning behind it. Yet for Zephiel, this makes no sense. He goes from being fairly normal to having an indomitable will, wanting to eradicate all of humanity in a ridiculously short amount of time. Unlike a lot of other villains in the series, Zephiel is doing this all on his own volition. He isn't possessed by some demon or dragon god, he came up with this idea on his own and wholeheartedly believes it. This feels so disingenuous and forced. Maybe it's because I personally hate the humanity is bad villain archetype that plagues movies and other forms of media. Or maybe it's because it was forced onto Zephiel despite seeming out of character with his past behavior. Yes, I understand that he's delusional, warped by his father's hate and mother's manipulation, but holy shit, does this feel fake? Let me compare him to another villain in the series that has a very similar goal. Warning, Radiant Dawn spoilers are going to be coming up. If you want to skip over them, then just go to the timestamp on the screen. Yeah, we're talking about Sephiroth. His goal is very similar to Zephiel's. He desires for Barak and Laguz to be destroyed because they cannot avoid conflict and war. Now, there are two major reasons why Sephiroth's goal makes sense and Zephiel's does not. First, Sephiroth went through a lot more trauma than Zephiel to come to his conclusion. He lost the power to transform after conceiving the Branded with Altina. He witnessed the oppression and enslavement of his species in his own nation, and is unable to stop the Syrians' massacre, the event that single-handedly wiped out the Heron race. All of this happens while Sephiroth spirals downwards into a deep depression, unable to take his own life and end his suffering. He has gone through literal hell, while Zephiel has daddy issues. Second, Sephron's conclusion about humanity makes sense because he was already predisposed to that idea. He is the one who begged the goddess Asherah to spare creation itself if Barak and Laguz could cooperate for 1,000 years. He has become the judge of humanity, the one who will report back to the goddess and help decide if humans should exist or not. He's taken on this role because he has to save humanity. On the other hand, Zephiel came up with this idea on his own. Because he wasn't preconditioned to behave in this way, his goal seems unnatural. What even angers me more is how he believes that dragons do not suffer from the same emotional problems as humans, despite working with John for multiple years before the events of Binding Blade. Either he's blind or so far gone that his mind will never change again.
Oh, look. It's a picture I took of you the first time I ever came here. Ah! Look at you, so young and happy. Where do the years go?
Shut the fuck up! My second gripe is how underplayed he is. When I see the main villain of a game, I should feel something. It could be fear, anger, or even remorse, but I should feel some emotion when interacting with the primary villain of an RPG game. I feel nothing with Zephiel. I don't feel anger with him because he has little interaction with the characters, so he doesn't manipulate them in a way that would invoke that emotion. I certainly don't feel sympathy for him because I think his motives are stupid and poorly written. I don't feel fear because we barely see him. The game portrays him as some massive juggernaut, an unstoppable force which must be taken down, yet we see minimal interactions between him and our cast of characters. There are only 2 instances where we actually see his might, Chapter 3 and Chapter 13. In Chapter 3, we witness the aftermath of Byrne's assault on Lycia, leading to Hector's death. We are supposed to feel Byrne's strength here, yet we don't even see the battle. What's more is that Zephiel didn't even fight Hector himself. He sent 2 of his dragon lords to deal with the axe-wielding Marquess. The game intends for us to feel fear, to shudder at the power of Zephiel, yet we don't even witness it. Fast forward to Chapter 13, and we see Zephiel's combat for the first time. I'm not gonna lie, the first time I saw Zephiel body slam Cecilia into the next chapter, I lost my shit. He easily has one of the most badass character models in the entire series. After the cutscene, I genuinely felt scared of how strong he was. He was a warrior to be feared. Yet, after this chapter, we don't see him again for 9 more chapters. That's right, we don't see the main villain again until the final chapter where we kill him. Zephiel literally sat in his castle doing God knows what while Rory and the Lycian army literally retake all of Aleb. Are you kidding me? How is this man supposed to feel threatening when he sits back and does nothing for half the game? How is he supposed to be portrayed as the strong-willed leader if he cannot find the motivation to stop the one person who can thwart his plans? It's so frustrating that the game just throws him to the side when he's the main antagonist. He's been built up all this time just to pay out with nothing. I feel that, despite his shoddy motives, Zephiel could have truly been a scary villain. If he had more interactions with the player, or at least possessed a threat in a few chapters, Zephiel would have been so much more influential. Instead, he feels uninvested, a side character who pulled the strings behind the scenes but had little personal investment. While other villains of the series invoke powerful emotions in the player, Zephiel invokes boredom. His soldiers are more interesting than he is. Now, let me clarify why I'm blasting Zephiel of all villains. There are plenty of villains who feel underdeveloped, such as Ashnard or Rudolph. The difference is that there are other villains to make up for these shortcomings. I would argue that the Black Knight is a more influential villain than Ashnard and Path of Radiance, or that Berkut and Jeddah are bigger villains than Rudolph and Duma. Yet, in Binding Blade, Zephiel is the big villain. There is nobody to cover for him. Who would? Narshan? Murdoch? Idun? No. Zephiel is the big bad villain. Nobody is covering for him. And that is what makes him feel so lacking. His motives are inconsistent with his past experiences. His actions are inconsistent with his will and resolve. Overall, Zephiel is an inconsistent villain, and I really wish he wasn't. He may have a troubled past, but it takes more than a good backstory to write a good villain. In the end, Zephiel is just a cool-looking soldier sitting on a throne. I'm Aldwin, and I'm out.